begin. Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is Lisa Edinburgh, Chair of the Westborough School Committee. Today is Thursday, October 6th, 2022. This meeting of the Westborough School Committee is called to order. Please stand if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I'd like to notify everyone in the room with us tonight that this meeting is being recorded by Westboro TV. School committee meetings are available for remote viewing or listening on Westboro TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and online on the Westboro TV YouTube channel. Thank you to Westboro TV for covering the broadcast this evening. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Hvac, Director of Finance and Administration David Gordon, Vice Chair of the Westboro School Committee Steve Durrett, School Committee members Raghunandan, Kristen Vincent, and Steve Batchelor. And unfortunately, our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Daniel Mayer, cannot be with us this evening, as well as our Student Representative and Liaison, Aratrika Ghosh, as well as our Recording Secretary, Jen Benton, but she's be watching from home. We have staff from Westboro TV here, and I'd like to personally welcome everyone sitting in front of us and those watching from home. The agenda for this evening is as follows. We'll begin with an approval of minutes from September 21st, 2022 regular session meeting and the September 23rd retreat session meeting. Then hear from Amber Hvac with the superintendent's report, followed by the Director of Finance and Administration's report, continuing the meeting with the school committee member reports, followed by the building project updates. We'll then potentially hear from some citizens during citizens' requests, then an update on the Westboro High School makeup days, followed by an update on the Westboro High School repair of building timeline. Soon thereafter, we'll hear a capital planning update. Then we'll be discussing the fall town meeting warrant articles, and then we will bring up, that will bring us to an action on the superintendent's 2022-2023 goals, and we'll continue with the school committee goals for the 2022-23 school year discussed and written at the school committee retreat. We'll then take action on the 6 Massachusetts Association of School Committees resolutions that we discussed last time, and finally we'll enter into an executive session and then adjourn for this evening. Sound good? We'll begin with an approval of minutes. Do I have an approval of the minutes from September 21st, 2022 regular session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? The 5-0, 5 being present. Thank you. And now, do we have an approval of the minutes from the September 23rd retreat session? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Elapsed.
There's 4 in favor, 1 abstention, 5 being present. And now we'll move over on to the superintendent's report. Amber, take it away.
Such a lively transition this evening. Thank you. So we had a busy week last week and the 2 weeks since we've seen each other. I'll pull out a couple of highlights, and with our Trika here, I'll hope to hit some of the highlights she might have. Arts in Common was this past Saturday, and the hurricane residual impacts in our area led to kind of a really dynamic, quick swap to a new location by that amazing team at the community level that plans that event, and we moved it to Mill Pond. I think that it was really, everyone was very, very grateful that we were able to accommodate them quickly and work out a floor plan with them, and the feel of the event was really wonderful. Just a shout out to kind of our team that helped do that and all the different people that attended. Our student participation on that day is very, very high in terms of booth support and setup and breakdown support, and just kind of a really great day for everybody. They had food trucks, and between homecoming and Arts and Common, the local food trucks are getting lots of good activity and marketing. So felt very, very good. I really enjoyed the day. I also this week attended a MEMA training, which is basically emergency management training work that's at the town level, coordinated in Westboro for our local and then on to state and federal level by Pat Purcell. Takes point for our team, does an incredible job. We're very fortunate to have him as our fire chief. He's very, very thoughtful about the infrastructure of planning, the delineation of who needs to have different chain of command pieces, organizational management. And I think when you see how quickly we're able to respond in both small scale issues and then into larger scale potentials, he does really good work keeping us ready. So with that training I attended, it was like 3 hours. It was a tabletop exercise. So it was the core Westboro Extended Emergency Management representatives. So I represent the schools there. Should we need to set up an emergency command center, I would be on point to go to the fire station, and in that room would be on point to represent the schools for communication there and coordination. And then we basically took a scenario, they presented, and this was done by the state level coordinators who then step up to the federal level with FEMA, and really worked us through a tabletop exercise of how would we respond several days out, 2 days out, within the moment, and then within recovery and of an event. And so it was and they proposed scenarios and kind of push on you with different areas where you need to improve. I think regionally we represent very well in terms of our area. Mutual aid we provide to other areas and vice versa, they to us. So it was meaningful. I think Northborough was there, Shrewsbury, we were there, and then one other town. So it was a really meaningful, not something you hear me mention often, but those layers of kind of administrative support work. We had the budget summit last week, and it was was it last week or the week before? I think the weeks are blending together, where we had an opportunity to profile the upcoming anticipated budget pressures, potentials and pressures of the year ahead. And that's a tri-board meeting. I thought it was really effective. I'm sure many of you will mention it. Also attended 2 board meetings last week, Select Board and FinCom, to talk about our warrant articles. I'll highlight that more to you later when we talk about warrant articles. Open house events are almost complete at this point. The high school needed to reschedule theirs. It's rescheduled to the 27th. That's a Thursday in 2 weeks for, I believe, 6:30 in the evening. I think those are the highlights that I was going to provide tonight, and that will be my report.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Dave?
And actually, no updates tonight.
Nothing for this evening?
Nothing for this evening.
Okay. We'll move right along to school committee reports, member reports. Steve Batchelor, you want to start us off?
Sure. I do have one update to announce. Since we've last had a meeting, the Hvac, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, held new elections, and so we have some new incoming officers. So I would like to announce them and thank them in advance for their service. Tanya Martin will be serving as the new Hvac ELL officer. Audra Chas will be serving as vice chair, and Aaron Stevens will be serving as co-chair along with me. I will be co-chair. And then I'd like to thank the outgoing officers for their work over the last 2 years. It's been really nice having their support, and look forward to events coming up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen?
I don't have anything tonight.
Okay, and Raghu?
I don't have anything to know.
Okay, Steve, I'm going to hold off until the building report. I would like to thank the members of the Select Board and the Advisory Finance Committee and the department heads for the tri-board meeting on September 29th to bring together the Select Board, Advisory Finance Committee, School Committee, and department heads to develop a common understanding of budgetary pressures and priorities for fiscal FY24 was an impressive gathering and a very point in discussion as we begin budget season. So just wanted to thank them all for organizing and coming together. It was wonderful. I also wanted to mention that, the Turkey Trot, the benefits initiatives for the Westboro Public Schools will be held on Saturday, November 19th at 9 a.m. I mention it so early in the season because you can register today at westboroturkeytrot.com. And then I also want to remind everyone that Fall Town Meeting is Monday, October 17th at the high school at 7 p.m. Really important, lots of warrant articles that are affecting so many departments of our town, and it is a wonderful civic duty to come and support and or dissent, as you so rightfully might do. But it's really important to get involved and read the warrant ahead of time. So if you have questions, you can ask departments, but you can also ask questions on the floor. But again, October 17th, Monday night, 7 p.m., Fall Town Meeting. Okay. We'll move on to the building project update.
Well, at this time, we don't have an awful lot to talk about in terms of school building projects. The Fales project is moving to final completion at a snail's pace. There's still some punch list items to create. We received our certificate of occupancy in the last couple of weeks, and I think all the remaining ground that was out there has now been seeded. Recently, they did all except the area, by the way, that will be the shade structure. There's two parallel fences that allows the construction vehicles to get to that point. Last time I saw it, they were pouring the foundation for it, and the structure itself, which is kind of like a Tinker Toy set, will arrive sometime in the middle of December and be erected. At that point, that particular stripe of open soil will be prepared. As soon as they're done with the foundation and backfill, they'll also seed that. Hopefully, they'll do it soon enough so that we'll get a catch. But all of the other spaces, including the part that's to the north end of the site near the playgrounds, has been hydroseeded, as well as the north side of the building. And so with the rain we've had recently, you can actually see the grass is growing, and so the color is changing from brown to green. The only other thing, and in fact there has been a neighbor who's been following the project, I had reported that the lower parking lot would have been finally paved, the finished pavement, on the 5th of October, which was yesterday. The schedule changed based on other things that had happened, and so at this point it's scheduled on October the 24th, and except for the shade structure, that's pretty much everything that needed to be done outside of any significant magnitude. Interestingly enough, that the lower field, as a result of all the rain, the grass seed that was planted there is starting to sprout. And so it's starting to look pretty good. It's filled in quite a bit. There is a stripe of soil that's still open down along the tree line on the east side of the site, which will eventually be hydroseeded as well. It's been left open for now in case we need to get any equipment down to the geothermal well field as they finish up the installation, if you will, of the antifreeze in that system, which is supposed to occur this month. So that's pretty much it. Our warrant this year dealing with, we hope our next project to complete which is the HVAC system for Hastings, and a warrant article to expand that scope we'll discuss tonight so that we could also include the ADA engineering in what we're doing because each one affects the other. And so hopefully that will be voted at town meeting, allowing us to prepare design drawings and go out to bid for both of those concepts to return to the annual town meeting next spring. We hope with the final dollar amount to be able to execute and complete that project. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move right along. We are ahead of schedule, just a reminder out there. Even though we've only gone through a few agenda items, we are way ahead of schedule. So because the next, I'm going to ask if there's anyone here for citizens' requests. Oh, great. So we will do citizens' requests, but I may come back to it later in case someone walks in expecting to be able to join us at 6:35. But let's continue with citizens' requests. So we do have someone here right now. As a reminder, I'm just going to read the policy. We have a policy regarding citizens' requests. Sorry about that. Some important pieces of this policy include that you must be a current resident of Westboro. Speakers are allowed to address the school committee about issues within the school committee's purview, such as the Westboro School District policy or budget. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak to the school committee. Written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the presiding chair before or after the meeting. You are welcome to hand me additional comments in writing now or send them via email, and I will share them with the other school committee members. Public comment by residents in this meeting is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. Our role is to listen carefully to what you have to share with us tonight. Clapping, cheering, calling out, or any other noise following a speaker is not allowed. A reminder that if not following the policy, this may cut into your time. Additionally, I want to remind the members of the school committee that when making a point of order, please address your concern to the chair initially rather than to the speaker. So I see we have someone here for citizens' requests. Come right forward, take a seat right in front, and be sure to speak into the microphone and start with your name and street address.
Sure. My name is Richard Riccardi, 2 Hadley Lane in Westboro.
Oh, really?
Is that
speaking
audible?
The reason is so that Westboro TV really
Sure.
hears you as well.
Is that okay? Better?
Yeah.
Okay. So committee members and administrators, thank you for making this time available. I appreciate it. And I do recall that the Westboro School Committee rules do not require the committee or its members to respond to resident questions. However, nor is there anything preventing reply, at least that I could find. So my thoughts are, as the overwhelming majority of Americans will soon have Columbus Day in whatever form they have it and whatever way it means to them. My question today is asked to help residents of Westboro better understand what basis the Westboro School Committee used in deciding to eliminate the Columbus Day holiday from the school calendar. Particularly, what were the historical sources used to make the decision and their citations. History is a profession like other professions, doctor, lawyer, auto mechanic, architect. Few would attempt these without proper training. History is no different. It's a profession with a long-established process methods. Through undergraduate minoring in history and economics major, which involved a lot of history, and graduate work in historiography, which is the study of how history is recorded, I learned to respect the processes of recording history, which are designed to rout out imbalance, emotion, and perspectives of the present. Given these, and that dozens of books have been written about Christopher Columbus, I and others respectfully ask the Westboro School Committee to provide a written list of the books, documents, texts, textbooks, or any other history materials in their citations that the committee used in coming to its decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else here for citizens' requests? Okay, so I will likely come back to this agenda item should someone walk in for that agenda item.
But only at 6:35.
but only at 6:35, exactly. Very good. So we're going to move right along to the update on the Westboro High School Makeup Days.
Thank you. So Daniel's been doing the work on this, and I will present just kind of the summary of where we are. We think it's important that we update families and faculty soon so that people can plan. We were waiting until we could contact the state, DESE, speak with them, make some proposals, and then kind of talk with some key leaders and work with Brian at the high school to direct a proposal. So a couple key pieces. We have 2 days to make up. We do have to make them up. They cannot be let go. They do not count as snow days. They cannot be done remotely. So just things people I know have questions about. So we wanted to let people know and reassure them that we asked all those questions. We cannot do them as minutes across days. The state expects you to define them as purposeful and meaningful instructional days, and they want them in the full day that they provide. The days can be a half day, as we know counts, and so that would be within the spectrum of possibility for those 2 days, should the high school map it out in a way that they feel that they could use half days to fulfill those requirements. We also want to be cognizant of not bringing up disruption to families who have already planned vacations, outings. So whenever we're looking at where we would place making up that time, after careful consideration and talking with the high school, we would like to propose that we believe the most meaningful and least disruptive would be to place the 2 makeup days at the end of the school year at the high school. We would then basically shift and adjust the exam period so that it would be workable such that the prep days, the review days, exams, and then there's always a question and closure day where they can review that falls at the end, and that's usually could be a half day meaningfully for people that would need to come in and follow up on having conversations and closure. So I think I, as well, with Daniel's perspective and Brian's work with the leadership people he talked with, feel this is a proposal that makes the most sense. And I would ask you to approve that so that we could communicate as soon as possible to families and faculty. So I guess I would open it up for discussion or questions.
Comment? Okay, I mean, I guess I'll make a comment. It seems, having thought about this, these 2 days, that the only options appear to have been either vacation days or at the end of the year days. And since we know from surveys of the past about when it comes to days within the year, because we've taken a lot of feedback from parents and teachers and students, that many students work over weekends, over vacations. Many teachers have kids who have vacation from other districts. We know that people have already made their plans for April and February vacations, and so including trips from the high school are taking. So there's a lot of factors. There's camps during the vacation weeks. So it seems as if the end of the last 2 days is really, it feels like the only option. So I can understand why that's being proposed. And it makes sense to me that you would add them to the end of the year prior to the exam period so that it's 2 full teaching days.
Yeah.
And any other thoughts?
And just to be clear, if there are snow days to make up, there probably won't be, right? But if there are.
You know I hate snow days.
I know you do. These days would come after, because the whole
After
district
those,
makes
right.
up the snow days.
The whole district would shift against the snow days, and then
the
they
high
would
school.
still be 2 days beyond that, right?
We're
And
okay with transportation would.
yeah, we would organize for those 2 transport days and budget for them. We also, I just want to be clear with 2 other things, like we did look at Saturdays, and Lisa's kind of alluding to a piece of that, hugely unpopular with babysitting and events for teachers and for families and work and all sorts of sports and everything. So not workable. And I think the other piece is you can't take a half day and make a half day a full day. It doesn't count. So something like, could you put it against like a half day PD day and stay for a full day? It doesn't, or a half day where we had a half day and extend the day. It would then count as the one day. It doesn't give you the makeup day. So I just want to make sure before we complete it that, we kind of exhausted the range, and I feel very confident that this is the least disruptive and will be the most popular with the senior class as well, which is important for our ongoing support of the student body. That in honor to our Trika, who's not here, I know she would be smiling because they would not have to make up those 2 days. So
There may be a question out there about the fact that Hastings was allowed to use a half day plus a half day to equal 2 full days. That no longer is allowed by the state.
they've adjusted a whole range of their practices because they used to let you place minutes. They were exploring remote days. And so I think they've really just kind of drawn back and put a line, certainly under Riley's leadership, a line in the sand around his view of seat time and days. So, he's been more than steadfast about that under his leadership model.
And also, we're talking about snow days. People have asked whether we are allowed to have alternative learning days, and the answer is no. The state allowed alternative learning days back in 2019, 2020 was the final year. It happened to coincide with COVID. So even though we went online for quite a bit, that the state accepted, those were not considered alternative learning days. They no longer have those, and so snow days will be snow days. Okay. Do we need an approval of an emotion on that?
Yeah,
or-
Yeah, we need a
I think we
motion.
do.
It's a
Does anyone
change
have
to
a
the
motion?
calendar.
I'll have a motion to approve that the makeup days will be at the end of the school year, the 2 makeup days
Of the high school.
for the high school.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And any discussion? All in favor? We have a 5-0 vote with 5 being present, so that passes.
Thank you very much. We'll put together a communication and share that out. I need to make a note to do that.
Okay. So we're going to move right along to the Westboro High School repair of the building timeline. For those who are unaware, there was a fire at the high school, and there are some classrooms that are being repaired.
All right, so we're going to pull up the memo there that we provided for you. This is preliminary planning. We're moving along to, we had a very productive meeting today. Dave worked with Leah from across the street in finance and with the town manager just to walk through process for the insurance claims to make sure that we felt ready and prepared to dig in. The team that came and did the assessment have now made a proposal to us, and I've given you basically a kind of a rough draft layout of their proposal, and I'll summarize it for you. Again, I think this is to keep you updated. It's not for a vote. It's more just organizational management updates, and it's still being finalized. The framework basically would mean that we would close off the second and third floor areas that require that back corner with those 13 classrooms, basically, to take those out of service the weekend before the week of Thanksgiving break. So then the Monday, Tuesday would be alternatively moved. So they would pick up that week. Then we would be on for Thanksgiving. We would come back in our regular schedule for the, whatever it is, the 3 weeks leading into winter break. And then winter break, New Year's finishes that. And when we would return, the target would be that those rooms would be complete and we would be able to gain access for entry into the building. I think it's reasonable given the scope of work that they need to complete and given the fact that their track record on this type of work is quick, intensive, and really managed as a SWAT team approach where they all come in and kind of layer their work to move quickly. And it's really, this is what they do. So right now, what that would mean would be, and you can see down, if you scroll down, you can see we asked a variety of questions which are still being considered, and I'm just sharing them with you so you can see the way we're processing this with them. We did look at then, if we didn't do this methodology, they'd be picking away at it on weekends and nights, and the disruption to fragmentation of a process like that is really not tenable to us in terms of impact, in terms of just what that means around ongoing management and people being in your building longer, and just things that, having done enough construction work, are not our perspective choice. And then the only other choice would be to wait till summer. And so we deferred away from that as well, because we don't want to wait. I think that the status of those rooms are viable and workable, but we also feel it's important that we get these repairs done. So they've provided for us updates on the beginning of these kind of questions. We feel confident that we'll answer those, lay out the schedule, and then the high school will be making shifts that would run roughly parallel to the methodology they used during the 2 days, like the week after the fire, where they'll basically run an alternative schedule where the teachers and students displaced from schedule from those rooms will go to the open rooms on a standing schedule. So they can't be in math, but there's a space that's open second period, so that teacher will teach math in there. So a lot of high schools actually work that way all the time. That's very different for us. We have the advantage of being able to establish spaces where teachers can stay for their prep, and the students can find them, they can work with them. It's a really high quality model when you can leave your high school scheduled that way, with minimal disruption to shared spaces. We've always had some of that, but it's not would be at this high percentage for the short term. So that's the current plan. Dave has done a very nice job to set up the tracking of the finances. All finances will go straight to insurance claim and be paid from the standing insurance claim revolving account on the town side. Those funds pay those costs, and I think we would be ready to go. So I would open it up to questions and discussion. Again, this is the first look at this in terms of our anticipated plan, but given how quickly that's coming up, we're looking to lock it down and make sure that they're ready to go.
Okay, questions? Thoughts? Opinions?
Yeah.
What we have to do. I liked in the bottom, it did show that query forms would be completed by those that are entering the building.
Always, always. Yeah.
Right.
And will this require some adjustment of our custodial staff to be in the building while the workers are there? Because I see they're going to work second shift 3 to 11. I don't know if
We have
custodians
someone
are
there
late.
till that time anyway, because we have first and second. We would have to have, some checks, which we already have weekend checks if they work weekends. So, typically we would rotate through an admin check on site or a custodial team member. So I'll keep you updated. We kept basically the renovation to parallel the current, paint colors, floor design, like just to look like a replacement so that it doesn't stand out in a way that feels distracting or very, very different from the rest of the building and its flow. So I feel good about where we are. It's incredibly unfortunate, but I feel like the team that's come on board is going to give us good work to help us get this repair done quickly. I just want to give a shout out to the high school faculty. I think the ability to be flexible, to think on their feet, to team together, to be collaborative, to manage hard things effectively. I just want to recognize that not all faculties function that way, and Westboro's ability for faculty to think about from a community and focus perspective is something I just want to recognize as really a high-quality team that I enjoy working for. So we're going to do everything we can to minimize the impact to them. It has a much higher impact to them than on students. And students, I think, can more effortlessly just shift their schedule. So just want to give a shout out to our team.
Good work, good work. So I am going to, as the chair, have decided that I would revert back to citizens' request since we were way ahead of schedule and we had a citizens' request a little bit earlier. But we're going to come back to it because I see someone who may be speaking at citizens' request. Is that correct? Okay, so I'm just going to go through the policy. As a reminder, we have a policy. Some important pieces of this policy include that you must be a current resident of Westboro. Some speakers are allowed to address the school committee about issues within the school committee's purview. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak to the school committee. Written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the presiding chair before or after the meeting. You are welcome to hand me additional comments in writing now or send them via email, and I will share them with the other school committee members. Public comments by residents at this meeting is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. Our role is to listen carefully to what you have to share with us tonight. Clapping, cheering, calling out, or any other noise following a speaker is not allowed. A reminder that if not following the policy, this may cut into your time. Additionally, I want to remind members of the school committee that when making a point of order, please address the chair, your concern to the chair initially rather than to the speaker. The chair has the right to have participants register in advance so that session time limits can be applied and so that participants can be called upon in an orderly manner. That is not necessary for this evening. So, Mr. Conklin, are you here for citizens' request? He's already gone, yeah.
Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street. We're having an election for governor and lieutenant governor coming up, and the opposing team to the present one in office has got a Bill of Rights for Massachusetts parents. And some of the things on it that they just came out with today, expanded school choice, whereby parents are given more flexibility to send their children to charter, vocational, or private schools, or homeschooling if public schools are not an appropriate option. Now, whether the school committee has anything to do or can support that or whatever for the parents and the children, after all, that's the whole idea of the school committee and the school district and the state educational facility, let alone the federal one. Requiring parental informed consent for important education decisions, including controversial curriculum subjects and educational materials, human growth and development courses, usage of school library and media, health services, student surveys, guest speakers, and athletics for medical testing and treatment involving minors. So this is some of the surveys that you guys are doing that the parents don't know about. As far as I'm concerned, they're not being included in a lot of this stuff as the files are being built up on the children for whatever the state's nefarious or good goals, whatever. But the parents should certainly be included in all this surveying and this kind of thing. And also there's been some things with the COVID vaccine requirements, maybe not in this high school, but a lot of the high schools in Massachusetts have not allowed students to participate in extracurricular activities such as sports and this kind of thing unless they show proof of vaccination status. And so to eliminate that kind of stuff. Now we've gotten some new documents out of the Biden administration as far as the coercion of school districts and states to making sure that everyone gets vaccinated. And so there's been a lot of this going on. kind of thing. And also getting rid of the masking and this kind of thing, as far as bypassing your need as a school board to get the federal funds and.
Oh, I'm so sorry. 3 minutes has passed. Thank you very much. Oh, goodness. The music was going off. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to move on to next to our agenda item, which would be the capital planning update. Is that Dave tonight?
So I'm going to,
and
excuse me, I'm going to
Presenters?
lead into Mr. Ferguson joining us and our roofing expert, Mr. Sillen, who's helped us in the past, specifically with, at least in my duration of being here, with the Armstrong roof issue. So very happy to have them. I just wanted to make a slight modification to what was in the packet. What you're seeing on the screen now is just a slight modification to the file that was shared with you in the school committee packet. And is what we tried to do is provide you a little bit more chronological information as to any updates relevant to this year that were new. And then we also wanted to be mindful of if you can reflect back on our capital plans for 24 and 25 of prior years, where things got moved off as we shifted. As you know, capital, with all efforts to be proactive, sometimes tends to be reactive. So for us, we wanted to at least keep you informed and knowledgeable about what was shifting and sliding as we prepared for FY24. In addition, as Superintendent Buck has mentioned several times, we are in the process of the RFQ for the buildings and grounds assessment from an agency to come in and essentially look at all of our infrastructures and provide a timeline for everything that's needed within the near and extended future, which will provide help us provide an opportunity to give the town the information they need for their 10-year model. Again, I pass the floor to Mr. Ferguson and Mr. Sillen related to the FY24 and 25 capital budget.
Thanks, Dave. Bob Ferguson, Director of Buildings and Grounds for the public school system here in Westboro. And we're pleased to have Adam, who's also a Westboro resident, representing the Garland Company. And Adam is the territorial manager for that company. He's been very, very helpful in helping us to prioritize the roof projects that need to be done here in the town. And we're happy to have him to answer questions or whatever. And I appreciate the fact that you're here, Adam. Thank you. So before I get into the sheet that you see displayed up here on the screen, I'd like to add a little context. Jotted down a few notes. I was asked to, jot a few notes to try and add some context to the process. As a matter of process for developing a capital improvement plan each year, the Buildings and Grounds Department, as you all know, collaborates internally with each other, various vendors, school department administrative staff, and leadership personnel in order to leverage in-house and vendor expertise such as Adam. We go to all our resources and try and leverage their intelligence and their expertise as much as possible, put our plans together. This collaborative effort leads to a better understanding and analysis regarding upcoming projects that are on the horizon, and gives us the ability to more accurately prioritize those projects. So if you look at this sheet here, the yellow highlights, when we go and we digest the capital improvement plan and what our needs are and the necessities that we need to address, the yellow highlights have actually been moved off of fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25 due to budget concerns and trying to prioritize as best as possible with the information we have available. So, for example, the Armstrong gym roof repair, $10,000, is now removed, and we're going to take care of that with our in-house budget. We moved the parking lot funds, which historically has been $80,000 a year, moved out to fiscal year 27. As you know, each and every year we go through with our in-house budget and we make repairs as best we can with the potholes or whatever to make the roads passable. But I want to make sure that everybody does understand that eventually, down the road, all of these parking lots and driveways and access areas are going to have to be dug up and repaved, and that'll be an expensive undertaking. So that's another project that will be on the horizon. But for now, I think we can suffice by moving it forward to fiscal year 27. The Mill Pond Chiller project has also been moved out to 2026, and the Gibbons Middle School gymnasium floor replacement. If you remember from the gymnasium floor replacement discussion last year, you know, there's only so many times that the floor companies can come in and actually sand the floor down without having any wood base left to sand down. So we're at a point now with the Gibbons Middle School that, you know, we can continue to refurbish it, but we can't sand it down any further. And, you know, eventually it's going to become a safety concern with wood lifting up, and it'll have to get done. But we can push that out to 2026. You know, rising inflation continues to be a major concern with respect to project costs and scheduling, as we all know. The impact of postponing projects for any given year poses a very real potential to significantly escalate the current numbers, as you see here in the sheet. Today's inflation rate is published plus or minus 8.3% or more. And as an example, the $13 million total you see here under fiscal year 24 could, in the future, actually be $20 million when factoring in inflation and contingencies if it's pushed out. The Buildings and Grounds Department has recently solicited proposals, as Dave, I think, mentioned, from various design and engineering firms for a new long-range capital planning improvement plan in order to satisfy the town's request for a 10-year look ahead. So we did have the DRA report, which is now aged to 14 years or older. So we need to have that refreshed. So taking into account that the new long-term long-range capital improvement plan will not be available until sometime next year, hopefully early spring or late spring. We are confident that the fiscal year 24 capital plan is relatively firm at this time. And I just want to point out, you know, dealing with aging buildings and facilities is not unique to Westboro, as we all know. All the towns in Massachusetts are facing, you know, similar realities across the country, both in Westboro and across the country. So getting back to the yellow sheet, this is basically what we're proposing, and I can just go through the list. I know most of you are familiar with what we've had on the list. These have been on the list previously, and we've kind of jockeyed them around in order to prioritize properly. The Hastings School ADA design is estimated to be 12% of the total ADA MAAB updates. The total MAAB updates for the ADA, which is the American Disabilities Act, which needs to be done and needs to be accomplished before any other work can be done at the Hastings, was $3,650,792. That was from GGD Engineering. That was a preliminary rough order of magnitude estimate. So as Steve had mentioned earlier, the 12% design factor would be $438,095, which would bring that total to $4,088,887. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. The Hastings School replacement of the entire PVC 80,000 square foot roof would be $3,600,000. And that's a rough order of magnitude preliminary estimate that Adam had worked diligently to get to us, and that's the best estimate at this time. If that was pushed out, we could add another 15% inflation. If the roof replacement was pushed out to fiscal year 25, which isn't advisable, then the new total would be estimated at $4,140,000. We'd add $500,000 to the cost. And I don't know if Adam, would you like to explain, you know, if you'd like to touch upon what needs to be done at the roof, just short detail?
Yeah, just briefly, that roof has just reached the end of its life cycle. The facilities folks.
Oh, can you speak into the microphone?
Yes.
Thank you.
I always forget that one. Yeah, Adam Silen, the Garland Company Territory Manager. So anyways, the PVC roof at Hastings, it's just well past its life cycle. The folks in facilities have done a great job limping it the last probably 3 to 5 years. So you don't have any sort of significant failure on that roof. The concern is if you are doing HVAC upgrades on that, there's going to be a lot of foot traffic. The roof's only going to get much, much worse. So instead of doing things backwards, to be proactive and do that roof in accordance with the HVAC work that's going to happen or might happen on the Hastings roof, only makes sense in an order of magnitude.
And I'm going to let them go through. And while Adam is speaking, you're going to see 3 roof items that are new on this list. And the context of those 3 are why I think it was really important for Bob to have Adam join us. As you know, the cost of roof repairs are extensive. Those numbers have escalated, and we have a lot of roof kind of pieces across our schools that are showing on our capital. So Adam and his work proposed, as we've looked at ways to both extend life of roofs safely, he came, and I'm going to have him speak about this when Bob is ready, but you're going to see there's the Armstrong roof repair, that $10,000. That is a specialized repair. It's at the top there in yellow, a specialized repair to the barrel roof of Armstrong. Because, you know, we just did the emergency repair of the major section of that roof with Adam and team and everybody. But at the time, we assessed that the barrel roof of the C part of the roof needed work. And he has a proposal that the $10,000 would allow us to extend life effectively. Similarly, in Bob's notations, you see the Mill Pond roof restoration for $1 million in FY24. That is a new item that hasn't been on our capital list, follows the same parallel restoration opportunity where Adam can speak to the fact that he thinks that will give us the opportunity to push the Mill Pond roof, because that roof's already 25 years old, would allow us to extend life of the roof out much further. I'll let him speak to that detail. And then when you scroll down to 25, you'll see the third roof. There you see high school science C wing for $1,386,000. An opportunity for us to extend the life of that roof using the same restoration process that he'll speak to. And then that would ride along with the repair of the high school roof, and then that whole roof would be having been touched. So Bob's going to continue to step you through that, but those are the three that cluster together that I think Adam's expertise can give us a framework for why we think these merit going into 24 and 25.
Thank you, Amber.
Sorry.
So the next item on the list is the Hastings School HVAC replacement or upgrade, which is $5,200,000. I don't know if Steve wants to elaborate on that, but there is a sequencing necessary in order to achieve the ultimate goal of having the HVAC upgraded. As you know, we did the sprinklers, and there's a whole list of things that had to be done in order to complete that project. One of them is the ADA, as I mentioned earlier. That needs to be done first. And then the roof needs to be repaired and structurally supported with steel in order to support the new HVAC units that will eventually end up in the roof. So there's a construction sequencing that needs to be done. So I don't know if Steve wants to elaborate that at the end or not. But
We can talk about it when we do the Hastings article. I think it's more appropriate there.
all right. So the last one is the Mill Pond, the one that Amber just mentioned. This is going to save the town an enormous amount of money by this it's a rubber roof restoration process. The methodology employed, you're able to overlay the roof, as I understand it, and Adam can elaborate on that. And its estimated cost $1 million. Will be able to take care of that. And likewise, in the high school, it's the same methodology in the C wing at $1,386,000 under fiscal year 25. So, Adam, if you wouldn't mind just kind of describing the process that's used to restore the roof and how we save money by not having to replace the entire roof by using that methodology. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so roofing, as with everything in the last few years, especially this past year, as the pricing and cost, materials and labor has gone through the roof. It's from estimates that you read, it's as low as 35%, when typically you see about 15% from year to year, and as high as 55 to 60%. So as you go forward and wait for roofs to actually fail and have to replace them, sort of what happened on Armstrong this past summer, it's an effort in being proactive, and the technology has come forward where instead of taking the entire roof system off, you wait for the opportunity for the roof to still be in good condition, which Mill Pond and the science wing both are in acceptable condition for a liquid applied roof restoration. Essentially what you're doing is you're creating a roof on top of the existing roof out of polyurethane or polyurea, and building a roof on top of that, liquid with liquid, like I said, polyurethane and polyurea. Whereas, and you're going to get the same life cycle out of it as you would if you took off, had to put new insulation on, new rubber or PVC. you get a 20-year warranty, and it should last about 20 to 25 years. So those typically come in at, if I'm doing the rough numbers in my head, anywhere between $18 to $20 per square foot. If you get lucky and you bid it out at the right times, they come in a little lower. Right now, we're seeing if you replace a roof, it doesn't matter really what material you're putting on the roof. For a full replacement, you're at 45 to 50. So if you do the math, you're saving roughly 50%. So it's double the cost to wait 3 years to do a replacement, and in those 3 years, you're still going to pay that 10 to 15% inflation on whatever that replacement would cost at that time. To do a restoration, it's the technology has come so far because A, we don't have materials to do the roofs. B, the cost is cost prohibitive at this point. So in an effort of being proactive, the town had asked me to go out to an infrared scan company. They go out, they check to see the percentage of wet insulation that's on a roof, which on these, it was roughly, I think, 8 to 10%, which is well within the acceptable range to do a roof restoration. If you wait longer, I've been in school districts where they've waited a couple of years, and it was mainly because of COVID. They missed that opportunity. They went from a $3 million bill to about a $7 million bill, which they're going to do this year. It's not a scare tactic. These are real numbers, and being proactive instead of reactive is always a better solution.
So we don't get cost advantages very often, but I think, given the number of substantial roof repair, and if you look into 25, when you see the high school roof, right, you basically have the Hastings project hovering out there as requiring additional funding at some point, inclusive of the roof, and you have the high school AB roof. If we could get C at the high school pushed off at the cost of, roughly $1,400,000-ish out 20 years, and we get Mill Pond life restoration for a good 15 years, and if we could do the barrel roof at Armstrong and get an extension of years, it buys us reasonable, appropriate opportunities to space our capital effectively across our buildings. So I think it merits a proposal to rotate it in, and Mill Pond in particular is hugely advantageous given that we've cared for that roof well. It's our youngest roof probably that's original at this point, and doing a restoration on it and getting 15 additional years out of it would be, I think, smart money. So I would just, I feel really good that we were able to get the information on the pricing and the scan done there, so that Adam could give us the opportunity to rotate these into the next 2 years.
A question, yes, Steve, or comment?
Probably know we've been playing round robin with the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee on these issues, which you have pretty much in fiscal '24, and we'll be talking about warrant articles to try to raise some money in order to try to get ahead of this. But one of the things that comes to mind sitting here and doing this stuff is, as part of a roof presentation, I think it would be good to have overheads of the building so that when we're talking about various sections of these roofs, that not only we, the school committee, but also anybody else who's watching from home would have the opportunity to know what sections and how much is not done or needs to be done. So there's a little better understanding of percentages. Because, for example, if we did quote unquote the C roof, and then we come back in a future year, say 2 years later, with the A and B roof, and people start saying, well, what is it? How come we don't do it all and fix it all at once? So that's one question. Another question that came up sitting and listening to the Finance Committee as they commented on our discussion the other night was the general comment that we use Garland as part of the quote-unquote engineering process to come up with proposals for roofs. And one of the comments was simply, well, how do we know that that process isn't biased? And so I guess I would say, in terms of the outcome of your product, to us as the school department. What, obviously you put together a specification to go out in a proposal, but what is specified as far as roofing material? And specifically, I guess I'm getting at the point, is it garland materials that are specified, or is it or equals?
Yeah, it gets professionally stamped.
Yeah, so my role in consultation, if you want to call it that, kind of ends where the job's going to go out to bid. The best example is the Armstrong roof. As soon as the Armstrong roof came up, the town requires construction control documents. The town had to hire an architect, and the architect obviously has to comply with all Massachusetts bid laws. They come up with the specifications. Typically, and on Armstrong, they were all performance-based, so there's no mention of garland in there. My services is typically free, and what I hope for is when the job's bid out that the contractors use my material. I mean, that's basically how we go to market. So there's nothing proprietary because they can't be in the state of Massachusetts. I can't come up with the specifications because the Massachusetts bid laws tell us we can't. There's a code review through the architect. So essentially, as soon as the job goes out to bid, is going out to bid for design drawings, that's almost where my voice stops. The town can advocate to say, hey, we want to use a garland type product or not, but I don't have a say in that when the town has control of that.
Since it came up, I think we need to put together, I guess, a memo in terms of how this all works, and I think your answer is sufficient, at least in my mind, to provide the benefit you do to organize this stuff as you did for Armstrong, but to also answer the question of potential issues of conflict, and because clearly that's going to be asked again. So, sure. Thank you.
I think the Garland Company, for the most part, for most roofing companies, represents the bulk of the materials that are installed everywhere anyway. I mean, that's just my assumption, but that was my understanding from my own experience that in any event, we'll put together, I'll have Adam put together a memo just describing the process and how he factors into helping the town out to where we get to put out for bid.
Good.
So getting back to the sheet, thanks, Steve. So getting back to the sheet, we've already talked about the yellow highlights under fiscal year 25. Amber already mentioned the high school roof A and B, $3,622,500. That's the rough order of magnitude estimate to replace those sections of the roof. We do have backup information for all of this. It was included in the package, as I understand it. It was a large package of backup sheets and information that, you know, we don't have to throw up there now, but it's available for people who'd like to see it. The high school exterior rim repairs, if you recall, over the last few years, going back to the DRA report, you know, there were concerns about the pitting of the concrete and the rebar exposed on the outside rim of the high school. And there was a concern that little chips of concrete would fall here and there, and it could pose a safety hazard. So what we've come up with as a resolution, a potential resolution, would be to cover that with an aluminum fascia at the time the roof is being done, and that'll resolve that problem very nicely. And Adam, if you'd like to elaborate on that, because that was a great idea to save a lot of time and money.
Yeah, sure. When you guys had asked me that, and I had agreed with you and Kelly that, yeah, you could go in and do some concrete repairs with concrete and in the conventional way. The problem with our climate here in Massachusetts is we have a lot of brick, we have a lot of masonry, and we have harsh weather. And very rarely does that brick or masonry get treated. I like to see it, and especially with an aging school, I like to see it covered. That way moisture can't get to it, which is going to cause spalling and cracking of the concrete. So not only does it solve two problems, it solves a problem of A, you're not getting that moisture in there with that. It's causing the concrete to spall off the roof. It also updates the look of the building. So you're killing two birds with one stone.
And that would be, and having that wrapped in with the package of the roof does it as all together, which I think feels really logical. So in '25, you basically have the package of the high school roof and rim put together into one kind of discussion.
Steve?
Yeah, I would suggest you reconsider using aluminum instead, to use stainless steel, because aluminum is reactive with concrete, and in fact is a problem for concrete. That reaction, the galvanic series, will actually cause it to turn to powder. So,
Yeah, typically on where the aluminum fascia is going on, stainless steel hat channels will go on first, and then you put the aluminum onto the stainless steel hat channels, so there is no contact between the concrete. I don't know if that makes a difference as far as what you're saying, as far as the two corrosive metals.
It might, based on the standoffs you use, but
Gotcha.
why not do the whole thing in stainless?
Yeah. It would, yeah, the cost would go up, but I don't disagree with you. I mean, if you're looking for a long-term solution, that's the way to do it, sure.
Thank you.
I wanted to just backtrack for a moment, which is the high school A and B roofs. Is there a reason that those are not restoration projects?
Yeah, so those roofs are very old. If I had to guess, those are anywhere from the early 80s to late 70s, I'm not sure. And they're also ballasted EPDM that have rocks on top of them. That type of roof, what it is they loose lay the rubber onto the roof and then put rocks on top of it, and that's what keeps the roof on. It was a design in the late 70s and 80s that it made sense at the time. It was very cheap, but it's not a great design. So yeah, no, you can't. As soon as you take those rocks off, the rubber is going to lose all elasticity and it'll actually pop up. The town actually did some repairs on some of the flashings that had pulled away from the building because the rubber, it can't stretch any longer like a rubber band. If you keep pulling it, eventually it's going to stop stretching. That's what's happening on that roof. So
I'm glad I asked that
unfortunately,
question.
you can't do it.
Because I think people are looking at the restoration and saying, what about that roof? And
C-wing is the,
And if you look at kind of the magnitude of, in as far as the cost savings go, the A and B roofs are roughly, they're not too much bigger than the C-wing roof. So you can see the cost difference right there.
Okay.
They're a little bigger, but that gives you an idea of how much money you save with the liquid applied restoration.
Okay. Thank you.
That was a great question, by the way, because I'm sure other people are thinking the same way you are. They're looking at it and saying, why isn't this a candidate for the, the overlay? But,
so, yeah, and to your point, and back to Steve's point too, around, creating the visuals, this is our kind of streamlined presentation to you because you track these projects. But then from here, by the 11th, Bob needs to complete the visual sheets with the backup that goes across the street on the 11th, and that has backup, and then he does presentations to that capital subcommittee where he can take some slide presentations, and he does kind of a tight update on the core items in defense of them being on the capital rotation. So structurally, this is a tight synopsis, and then if you are continuing to feel that this analysis and rotation makes sense, then basically he moves to finalizing the documents for the 11th.
Yeah, and on top of that, as far as restorations go, and there is a process into qualifying them. The infrared scan, which I mentioned before, which shows the amount of wet insulation, which is basically telling you how fast or how much your roof has failed. That's done by an independent company, has nothing to do with the Garland company. So we source other companies to back up what we think is going to happen, and then they give their opinions, and then we make a conclusion from there.
Okay. Thank you.
the scans are done by ProScan, right? Yeah. So that pretty much concludes our presentation, unless Dave has something else to add.
No, just one quick additional comment, which may come up. The infrared scans, I think Amber would concur, they were of minimal cost in terms of the potential long-term savings. So it was, pardon the expression, but it was a no-brainer to get the scans done in related to the potential what we are seeing as a benefit for the long-term financial outcome.
And I'm sorry, but I have one more question. In other words, I just keep going. I'm sorry that I'm all over the place. The parking lots, we're moving them up by 3 years. I'm curious what happens, let's say there's potholes. Do we patch until
Oh,
we
yeah.
get to those projects in 2027?
Yes, that's what we've been doing each and every year. We patch the potholes, we cut out the catch basins that are destroyed, replace them where they need to be replaced, and we patch everything up and make it look as nice as you possibly can with repairs. But for the most part, you know, they're all deteriorating, they're all getting older, and eventually they're going to have to be torn up and replaced.
Because 3 years is a long time to push the can, but, you know, if we patch until then, I mean, 80,000 is a lot, so FY '27.
Yeah, and I think when we get again, we went tighter on 24 and 25, where we feel like the decisions of those 2 years are strong, must-do, kind of move forward. Then we basically pushed out through maintenance and other decisions, larger projects, until we can complete the RFQ and get the company in here to do the next level of assessment, which gives us a new kind of framework of sorting our projects. So when you look at how we used the DRA report as an anchor to say, okay, what do they say we have to do? What do we see in front of us? You know, what does Bill Gabarino say, who manages all of our interior heating, cooling systems? And then we'll resort the list again with more kind of cohesive lock-in planning. And I think these 2 years will be our fixed years. And then, because the town is looking to do a 10-year push out, we, in good faith, until we get that report, don't feel we can do a really good 10-year, but we should have it by the end of this year or fall of 25 or 24 and be able to really then do some more work.
And just to be clear, when we mention move parking lot funds, the parking lots also include all the access roads and so forth, so it's pretty much all of the surfacing at the schools. It's not just the parking lots.
Okay.
It says parking lots, but that's our,
Also the surfing.
I had a question about the Epdm restoration. Did I hear correctly that there's a 20-year guarantee?
Yes, you get a 20-year warranty on that, which is, it's a standard. So if you did again, going back to a replacement versus restoration, when you get a single ply, so another rubber or a PVC roof installed, you typically get a 20-year warranty. So you're getting the same warranty for, you know, half the third of the price. Yep.
Thank you.
So.
I have one question.
Go. These are important questions.
yeah.
This is capital planning.
You know, for folks who are worried about higher taxes, is there a compelling reason why, you know, with higher prices and inflation and everything, we have to take up ADA updates on Hastings this year?
Oh.
Is there a compelling reason?
We're going to
why?
come to that discussion.
Yeah, we have to talk about that next.
We're
Yeah,
going to be talking
definitely.
about it next. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to, it's a good question. And it brings us to our next item on the agenda, which is talking about the fall town meeting discussion, which includes Articles 5, 6, and 30. Right? 5, 6, and 30?
All right. Any other questions for these gentlemen before we release them for the evening? Adam, thank you for coming in. Bob, thank you as well. And you can move forward with those drafts for the 11th, and we'll get things set up. So thank you very much. All right. Anything else? All right. You guys, you can go home. That's the gift.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
This is easier than going home to my kids. So.
Exactly. See, yeah.
You're welcome to stay.
So, we're going to be talking about the fall town meeting.
We can't
And
do it, not until we get our vote from the.
I'll wait for
we have to-
Amber on
that's
this,
not the
but-
town meeting on the 17th. We can talk with him tomorrow.
oh, thank you.
Good night.
We have had a lot of discussion about Articles 5 and 6, but we haven't talked about Article 30, which, Amber, do you want to give us a
Sure. So you have a couple of documents there, and I guess I'll frame it in an overview and say that we have submitted 2 articles. We have actually 3, because you have the discussion around the need for the FY23 budget improvements to support the out-of-district placements. We broke it into 2. We've had good discussion around that. That's a standing article ready to go. Article 30 is looking at the discussion of Hastings. And so we prepared an article that asked for the opportunity to expand the scope of the article to allow for completion of the ADA design and potential work in the scope of the article. There was a lot of discussion around that, and so as part of, we discussed it here, and I'd be happy to kind of give a synopsis of why we're doing what we're doing. Raghu, if you kind of are trying to frame that, I think I can give you a tight synopsis. I've been providing it in my series of conversations. So I attended the select board with Steve Durrett, and we talked about the framework of, and actually the memo that we developed, I think would be a good one for Raghu to review, and that provides a really good synopsis of why we need to do the ADA. So we proposed this article and it precipitated questions. So we went to the select board to walk through how the Hastings project required us to move forward with the ADA work first before we could continue any of the design and implementation of the HVAC. And so knowing that that was part of what we needed to do, that's the standing article. And so I'll provide a synopsis of that discussion, and Steve, you can feel free to jump in. We attended both boards, and the synopsis of the conversation with them was the same, which is we explained that because the Hastings project, we've done a lot with Hastings that's improved it, and we wanted to then complete the HVAC project, for which we have 2 previously voted approved town meeting articles with funding. And yet the total expenditures of costs at Hastings are triggering that we have to complete the ADA code upgrades before we can touch the building any further. So the trigger of the cost of the additional work that we've done in the building over time, and the size and cost of what projects are just can't be broken down into smaller pieces, thus constituting just a trigger for the ADA upgrades. So some people would say, well, could you wait 3 years for the other costs to fall away? But then if the next number you bring in is such a big number, it's still going to do the same thing and come back in and trip beyond the roughly 30% impact of your overall cost, which again is the benchmark. So as we've talked about before, and again related to the memo that we provided kind of as an overview, the total cost of your Hastings school value, if you do more work in the building beyond a certain percentage of the total cost, and it's done within a framework of time, it triggers that you are then basically renoing the building, and they trigger the code. So that's a layman's perspective as I'm presenting it. And so what it's done is it's left us basically hung up in process. We can't do the HVAC work until we complete resolution of code issues. We don't have funding for doing the code design. It's currently beyond the scope of the voted articles that we have money sitting there. So this article asks them to allow us from town meeting to access these funds so that we can complete the design for the ADA project, and then also complete the design work and things related to all of the HVAC systems. What happens with the windows and the rooms when we pull the HVAC units out of the rooms? What happens to needing to upgrade a portion of the roofing with reinforcement so we can move the HVAC up top? All that design work needs to be completed along with the final design for the ADA. So the article requests that so we can, without asking for more money, use the funds available to keep making progress, and then get, as I think Steve was very eloquent about when we met with people, coming in with designs and bids that are in hand, that are clear about what the cost impact will be to finish all the remaining pieces of the project that would get the HVAC, the roof structure completed as needed to do the HVAC, the windows in the room impact with the HVAC, and the ADA upgrades. So that's where we are right now. We can talk about that. The scope of discussion with the select board, and Steve again concurs with them, that we don't want to begin the ADA work accessing those funds. We want to come back with a complete number. That it would, in good faith, I think, be confusing to people if they think they're voting an article that would let us complete the ADA work and then we go out to bid and we have a gap. And that's not the good faith work and the process that the town and school committee has been trying to incorporate. That we want to have a concrete number. There would be funds remaining in this article potentially that could then go toward that, and we would know what the additional funding needs would be. So that's the gist of the conversations. The select board wanted to limit the original extension of the scope where we asked to then begin doing the HDA work. They just want us to do the design. So the motion that they're proposing basically supports the expansion of the scope to do the ADA design. And I have a draft of that motion to show you, and if you want, I can walk you through it, and then we can begin talking. All right?
Put it on the screen, that would be
Yeah,
good.
let's put the motion on the screen. It's right underneath there, Dave. It's, if you click on that, okay, there we go. So this basically, you can see the underlining motion there for ADA compliance design. They would amend the debt, practice reading motions. I move that the town amend the debt authorizations and reallocations of surplus funds approved by vote at the town under Article 10 of the warrant at the October 2019 town meeting, which appropriates said amount, the Hastings School HVAC Improvements Project, and Article 10 of the warrant in March 22 of said amount for the Hastings HVAC Improvements Project, to provide that the borrowing or reallocations of these funds authorized to meet the appropriations under such articles may also be used to pay costs for ADA compliance design at Hastings School, including all costs incidental and thereto. So it basically takes the funds, it articulates what's there, and asks for us to be able to then do the ADA compliance design. So that's the standing request. I think it's a clean motion and follows the trajectory of the conversations that both boards had. They are anxious to know that you support this, and they then will be taking the vote on town meeting floor. They probably will not have the opportunity to complete the cycle of conversation, although they might well be watching where we are and you know, be able to listen to the synthesis of your conversation and vote it at their next meeting, but they're having a variety of conversations. But they both articulated that they wanted to see the completion of the discussion that you were going to have. They respected that we had come to the boards to continue to have more active discussion, and I think there was a general support for letting us access these funds to find a way to unlock moving forward. Sorry, that's a long discussion, but I hope it captures that. And I would say, Steve, if you have anything that enhances that or improves it.
Did that answer your question? Okay, Steve?
Yeah, I guess just to add a little bit more to the point here, one of the reasons why we had those two articles before is because we were chasing our tail. Every time we would come up with an estimate and then come back to town meeting, we found out that the estimate was short, that we needed more money. This request will create bid documents for both projects, both the HVAC and all the things that are pertinent to it, as well as the ADA, and for us to be able to go to the town meeting using proper timing for the bid so that we have a valid bid in hand when we come to the annual town meeting next March, to be able to show the town what the real cost of these projects are going to be. And to the extent that the town accepts that and votes in favor of it, then that'll end the inflationary spiral that we've had. Now, the second, I guess, issue is, well, what happens if the town doesn't vote that at the annual town meeting? If we finish it under this article, that is, if we come up with bid documents and with the specifications necessary, but the town meeting doesn't vote it, those documents don't age. We can still use those documents to go out to bid later if the town so chooses to do so, based on whatever reasons why the town would choose not to do it at the annual town meeting. And so that, again, stops the inflation of the process to get to a point where you can come up with a firm number that won't inflate, since the town historically bids lump sum process for construction, that would be it. And I'm pretty sure that's the basis behind the selectmen's suggestion that we do it this way, so that we can end the spiral of not getting everything we need at the time to do it and not having, in effect, the authorization to go ahead to actually build anything until we do go out to bid. And so, as Amber suggested, the discussion with both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen was favorable to this approach, so that we can at least get value for the money that we're spending and be able to go ahead when the town so chooses to do so. And as was mentioned, the ADA could be in the same package. That is, we don't have to execute and build ADA first and then do the HVAC. If the town voted them both together, then those projects could go ahead together, and there is economy of scale, both from a supervision point of view as well as the execution of the job, since we building projects within an existing occupied school is difficult. And so that would certainly shorten the schedule to do this. It probably would take 2 summer cycles to get this all done. But to me, it's the most logical approach to get out from under the box that we've been in for these projects for a long time now.
Yeah.
So I did want to mention that I think that the select boards, they called it a recommendation, that this article definitely addresses expanding the scope that would encompass all aspects connected to the HVAC project. And that's sort of the key. So it adheres to their recommendation, and that they were talking about the economies of scale, so that if you're doing one thing, it doesn't cause you to have to redo it in the future. And so that was sort of key. And then when I was watching the Advisory Finance Committee meeting as well, there was, at both presentations, Amber and Steve did a great job of really relaying the history of the entire renovation project from the beginning days, many, 5 years ago? Is it 5 now?
2015.
2015, so 7 years ago when it all began, because many people on those boards weren't there then, and so giving the full history allowed people to really understand that this was really a renovation project at the same time where they were deciding between 2 schools, Hastings and Fales, and in the end, Fales is the one that became a new school, and Hastings' plan was to have a renovation. And that even though that renovation got broken apart, in terms of just finance, it makes very much sense that the recommendation by the select board was for economies of scale to encompass the scope of the project as one. And so that's what this article really does, is it just expands the scope.
And Lisa just reminded me, if you make the comparison of what it cost us for Fales, roughly $56 million. These repairs at Hastings, when we complete them, it would be substantially less than that cost of a brand-new school. Hastings has historically been a very good building. It continues to be a very good maintained building. These upgrades would make it viable for another 30, 40, 50 years as well. And so even the decision even made in 16, which was to make these improvements rather than demolish the building and start over are still valid. This is the right thing to do for Hastings and to continue what is very good school space for the town. So it is the economic approach as well.
There's no way we can get any money from MSBA for this.
No, and that came up too with the Finance Committee, and the reason why is that the MSBA has their own game plan. They require that they be a participant in the architects that you hire, that they be a participant in how you structure the project, and also how large the contingencies are, and also require an architect, an engineer, an owner's project manager, and a construction manager, and all those things cost money. But because we're already in the design phase, we really wouldn't qualify with the MSBA, at least under the current rules, unless they change something. But again, it isn't, the other thing that happened, by the way, because there was an original approach with MSBA for, what did they call it, rapid repair project? Something like that.
Accelerated repair project, yeah.
At that time, the town's budget for doing most of these things was $9 million. And the return, the return for the MSBA was a much lower number than what we got at Fales. And so when we looked at everything and we ran into the ADA issue, which then needed to be included, if you will, in the scope that the MSBA would not fund, but was required to do, it didn't look economic to the town at that point in time. So we bailed out of the MSBA process to come back and do it this way.
Could you just, we all know that ADA stands for Americans with Disabilities Act, and this is like a legal compulsory type of improvement that we have to go through. Could you just give some examples of what those repairs or those looks like?
Sure. And there's two codes that are interactive, and I'll make sure that Madam Chair, I don't think, did I share that memo that I created that I had to take to those? I'll send that to
I don't think
everybody
so.
again.
And remember, this is also MAAB.
Right, so
and
there are two
ADA.
codes that are
Two
interactive.
ones.
There's the state code, which is the MAAB,
Yeah, it's,
and accessibility. And
Mass
then,
General Laws 521.
Yeah, and then ADA, go ahead.
Perhaps I could save some time here. We got a report that was done at the request of the town manager and directed by the building commissioner. It was 637 pages of ADA ideas and requirements for Hastings. We received that as part of the building process last July, and when we brought the architect on board to do this, the instructions were review every single item in this list because we don't want to do this again. So Amber can give you that report, and then you'll know. And that's the true answer to your question.
Exactly. So in the document that I created, I'll send it to you after this meeting, it's a memo that kind of outlines the trajectory of history and it gives you the number of reports and things that we've done. You can look at them and just gives you a picture. And I prepped that to talk to those two boards. So you're upgrading door access width and accessibility that they can open for wheelchair access and mobility issues. You're looking at door exits with proper ramps. You can't just have like a step off. You're looking at bathrooms all having accessibility. You're looking at door handles. You're looking at the sinks in the rooms on the main wall there where you have to lower the sink and open the cabinet underneath the sink area for wheelchair access. So it's substantial, improvements that you can't do packaging them as individual pieces. We've done a lot of upgrades over the years, door handles, door pulls. Some doors were done when we did the internal reno that we did already tackle together was completed. So this would pick up all of the remaining pieces that would bring the building into code for the most current MBBA code expectations.
Okay. I just think it's important to give people a picture of like what are we looking at, like, wall handles and grips or ramps or elevators or, like.
You have to have a
it's
lift in
extensive,
the,
so, yeah.
like, it calls out a lift in the cafetorium for the stage. It's all of the same upgrades that we did at Gibbons. You realize we did the same in a renovation for Gibbons, where we brought that building up to current code as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Building up to that code, which is
Yeah, so I feel pretty good about where we are. Again, this is a very complicated project. It's moving, forward, and this would allow us to unlock the next steps. And so I certainly, seek, I think, your support articulated so that the other boards know that we're in a good place with how the motion and the article currently stand.
Can we just take a vote?
Yeah,
I think you
based
should.
on the discussions at both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen, they would like the school committee to, if you will, vote on the proposed motion.
On the
so that
motion,
they
you want to
can
vote on the
have a
motion, Dave?
conclusion.
Do we have a motion?
I would so move.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
And is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I see a 5-0 vote in approval of that motion. That passes, 5 being present. We're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the superintendent's 2022-23 goals. We heard from Amber last meeting, and this is sort of the updated.
My smarted up goals,
Smarted
yes,
up
so I
goals.
can walk you through them. So, thank you. I'll take a little bit of time to go through this. Let me just pull them up for you. So, I've always presented my goals in this framework, and it's varied over the years that I've worked here. And so, in the last couple of years, we made sure that I've always presented my goals to you against the 4 core standards that you need to evaluate me on. So, Dave, could you scroll down to the bottom of this document, all the way down, because there's a document, I put a document there at the bottom, a little bit, there you go, okay. So when you guys finish my evaluation, you always do an incredibly meaningful job to give me feedback, which I greatly appreciate. We then submit to the state my performance using this document. You indicate if I met, and you can see here goals. You see they'd like to have a SMART goal for your professional practice goal and your student learning goal. And then there's district improvement goals. So I've always given you my overall comprehensive goals. And so I retargeted them so that, and you can see below, see the 4 standards: instructional leadership, management, family, and professional culture. I pool my working goals underneath those 4 arenas for you so that you can then comment on each 4 of them against the rating scale. And that's how last year you gave me feedback and Lisa pooled it into the performance benchmarks. What I wanted to enhance providing to you was and during COVID, we didn't do the breakout professional goal, student learning goal. So if you scroll back to the top, you'll see what I've done is just kind of tighten this all up back to the general performance benchmarks that make sense. So I basically I'm giving you my goals framed with a professional goal with data and a timeline. And then I'm giving you a student learning goal lifted out of my overall work with data and a timeline. And then I left the framework of all the 4 standard work underneath there as my targeted district goal improvement work. So I basically have framed the overall package of my goals so that you can see, here's my district work, and it falls under these big arenas that you'll assess, both as the individual arena and then an overall district goals, and then 2 targeted SMART goals, a professional and a student goal. So I'm going to step you, does that make sense so far? So then I just want to do the professional goal. So for the professional goal, I basically lifted out a streamlined focus related to effectively implementing the new developed document framework that we created for the current strategic plan. So when we built the new strategic plan, we actually created a new document framework that we wanted to be more interactive with links and a place to frame, keeping a kind of a guiding record of the work so that it was more of a living document. That's a new practice for me, and therefore I'm lifting it out as my professional goal, because I think to get that right, I'm really going to need to focus on it and really target tracking to make sure I get links done and updates. I'll probably shift the way in the past I've done the mid-year report. I'll probably work within the document differently, and I think that's why I chose it as my professional goal, so I can model for you and be held accountable to kind of like implementing that as something we think is an improvement over the last one. The benchmarks for that for data will be the mid-year and end-of-year report. I'll give you leadership meeting agenda and notes where you can see the way we're processing and working on the strategic plan as it relates to using the document. And then I think the document in itself will fulfill the goal in that if it has the proper links, record, and meaningful communication with the community, it will give you a picture of utilizing that document in a way that's very concrete. The timeline for that would be that you would get it closure on it with my summation before you do my final review. Okay? Any questions on that one? Again, SMART goals are supposed to be thinner, tighter slices, so I basically framed a piece of all the larger work out for you to look at differently. So then a student learning goal. So I chose specifically to develop my student learning goal to demonstrate documentation for you of the professional development related to our UDL PD work that's just beginning to kind of unfurl this year, looking at innovation of teacher planning that frames providing better entry points, more student voice, and just better differentiation to the layers of classroom instruction such that all students have access. Your highest performers, your structured needing support performers, and diverse performers who have like different learning styles, just really innovating our planning model and our instructional model. That's kind of a very tight synopsis of what the Universal for Design learning framework is the focus of this year's professional development. And I was able to share a little bit about that to you informally, just kind of as a learning tool at retreat. So what I would like to do is demonstrate documentation of how that work is showing in the student classroom learning experience. So that'll be an interesting one for me. I'm going to use observation and then documentation of student voice and choice in student experience, as well as the multiple means of demonstrating access to learning and assessing student learning. That'll give me some clear things to lift out. Those are two clear components of UDL that are a little different than some of the ways we come at we certainly give student voice, but it comes more into the early stages of learning and then a trajectory of more student choice that relates to kind of the metacognitive process of students being more reflective about what do I need to learn effectively, what methodology is a good entry for me. And so kind of looking for like, how does that play out during the span of the year to see it in the student learning. And then looking at new ideas, explore, if you want to scroll down just a little bit more, Dave, new ideas explored and demonstrated in the classroom. So I'll basically be gathering some data to give you a snapshot of the meaningful impact of our professional development work this year. So I think that speaks to arenas where you like to see the payoff of that work, and so it's my student learning goal. Again, the timeline for sharing that will be against my end of year summative work with you by May. So, and then from there, I basically left the framework of the other work, which is all the other things that we will be tracking this year, which are basically the framework of our ongoing district improvement work that's always ongoing. So I hope that provides kind of the target of what you were hoping to see, and then I would open it up to any discussion or feedback.
Much smarter.
I'm so much smarter now.
The SMARter goals.
Yeah.
And that is an acronym. DESE has an acronym.
Well, it's a commonly used acronym with students too.
Yeah.
To develop a goal.
Strategic, measurable,
Time frame.
attainable.
Is there anyone who has any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve the superintendent's goals for
So moved.
22, 23?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Great. That will keep me busy. It's busy. I just want to say it's busy. So there's plenty to get done.
Thank you.
And now I'll turn it over to you and let you do your goals.
Yes, so thank you for putting in the smart ones. So they're all smart.
Making myself smarter, I know, yeah.
So, as some of you might not know, we met as we approved the minutes for September 23rd for our school committee retreat. And in our agenda was to develop Westboro School Committee goals for 2022-23. I'm going to read through them and then ask if the committee, if there's any edits or changes that you would like to make before we recommend that these are our goals and potentially approve them. Okay, so number 1, monitor and assess the district's educational equity and non-discrimination policies. That's JB, equal educational opportunities, and JBB, educational equity, and AC, non-discrimination, and the Westboro School Committee anti-racism resolution adopted July 22nd, 2020. Number 2, continue to support the range of social, emotional, and mental health programs for all students in the district. 3, monitor the 5-year strategic plan. 4, actively participate in the capital planning committee process and maintain effective strategic relationships with town boards, the community, and local and state government officials. Number 5, complete the FY24 annual budget process in a fiscally responsible manner that respects and represents the values of our town while meeting our community's educational mission and goals. 6, initiate a reassessment plan for the conditions of the district's buildings that are the responsibility of the school committee. 7, review and assess the school committee's focus on future green initiatives. Are there any questions or edits?
I didn't know if Raghu had any
Raghu, do you have any
comments
I
based
went
on,
through it.
we had the discussion without you, so I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to weigh in.
And we did have, a fair amount of discussion at our retreat. So, any other thoughts? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve these Westboro School Committee goals 2022-2023?
So move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Oh, any discussion? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor? We have a 5-0 vote with 5 being present. So we approve our Westboro School Committee goals for this year. And we move right along to the next agenda item, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, the 2022-23 resolutions. Last meeting, we read through them in great detail, so you've had time to review them and read them, and we are now in the voting process. And I think I'm going to go through them one by one. We voted them one by one, correct? So we'll start with Resolution 1. It's regarding sanctuary laws for transgender students. I'm just going to read the whereas, the therefore it be resolved, right? Because we've already read whereas, we've already read the rationale. You've all been able to examine them pretty closely. So therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls on the Great and General Court to join with other states in the passage of so-called sanctuary laws to ensure such children and their families have the power of enjoying in safety and tranquility their natural rights and the blessings of life, as guaranteed by the Constitution of the Commonwealth. Amber, did you have a question? No. Oh, okay. So, is there a motion for this?
I move that the school committee support this relative to the November,
Okay.
I think it's November 3rd session of the MASC.
Yeah, they're going to be voting it on November 3rd. This, by the way, the committee that develops all the resolutions met on July 5th, and they're proposed by member districts for consideration at the 2022 annual meeting of the association, which is November 3rd. Is there a second on this resolution motion?
Second?
Is there any more discussion about this? Okay. All in. I'm sorry. This is not a discussion with the citizens. It just isn't. This is it's not an open discussion. And we discussed these last time when we were here. So we're going to move on to the vote. All those in favor of the resolution 1?
Aye.
Okay, that's a 5-0 vote in support of resolution 1. We'll move on to resolution 2, to increase the maximum balance allowed by the Special Education Reserve Fund. We had a long discussion about this one. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts Legislature to amend Chapter 40, Section 13E by deleting, quote, 2% of the annual net school spending, unquote, and by inserting the following, quote, 5% of the annual net school spending. We had a lot of discussion about this one last time because it truly is the effect of what we've been talking about when it comes to Article 5 and 6 and our sort of the gap in special education funding. Does anyone have a motion for resolution number 2?
I'll make a motion that we support resolution number 2.
Okay, I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor of resolution number 2 motion? It's 5-0, 5 being present, and that passes as an approval. And our delegate is actually Steve Durrett, who will go to that annual meeting to represent us.
And I did send Lisa, I think I forwarded it to all of you, the percentage approved for increase of out-of-district placements that came out.
Oh, I didn't share it, but I can.
I think I'll have Lisa forward that to you.
forward
It's
that
the
to you.
rate that's
Yes.
acceptably set. They
Yeah.
set it at 14%.
Unbelievable.
The highest
Yeah.
it's ever been. It's never been more than,
Really is quite.
it's never been in the double digits, and it's never been more than, it's been in the 3s, the 4s. Not that they haven't come in higher, but they have to justify them more. And this gives them a base rollover for out-of-district placements at 14%.
Right.
So if you look at our budget where you have basically $3+ million that is out of district, you got to lay 14% increase on that. So it's shocking that there's no range there. That's
Right.
So this resolution is well within the appropriate expectation to request it being 5 and not 2%.
Right.
And that's well under what they gave districts.
I did want to mention to Mr. Matthew that we did discuss this last time, and there's been a 2-week opportunity to respond to the school committee through emails. You can always do that on anything that we discuss at our meetings if you have an opinion about it. So these were introduced and read fully 2 weeks ago, and so that would have given you opportunity to do that at this time. The agenda item is specifically to vote on these resolutions for the vote that will, the representation that will exist on the November 3rd meeting. So I just wanted to explain. No, it's been recorded. It's on Westboro TV. You always have the opportunity to watch our meetings and certainly respond by email.
This is not an open part of the
It's not.
meeting. This
I
is
just
not
wanted
an-
to explain
no.
the procedure. I wanted to explain the process. And we do have it every year, and it's always presented, it's always read. There's always an opportunity for at least a couple of weeks to respond if you had, if you wanted to. So, but it's not a discussion tonight. This is a voting in of the resolutions. So that's why we're not going into detail about them, because we already did.
And it wasn't a discussion 2 weeks ago. It's our meeting.
It would have
that
been
we
our,
discussed
it was
them.
our discussion, but anything that happens at our meetings, if people are sitting at home and they would like to respond to anything that we've discussed, you can always email myself or the school committee to give your thoughts about any of the issues. And even if you look at our agenda each time we have a meeting coming up, you're welcome to also give your opinion in email if you're not able to attend citizens' requests. So we'll move on to resolution number 3, which is membership of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls for the enactment of the legislation to repeal the provision of Massachusetts law that prohibits practicing educators and sitting school committee members from serving on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. Be it further resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls for legislation to reconstitute the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education by including members with expertise as licensed educators and members with expertise in public school governance. So, do we have a motion? Oh, yep, do we have a motion to approve this one?
So move.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Raghu. Beat you to it. And any discussion? All in favor of resolution number 3?
Aye.
See a vote of 5-0, 5 being present. We'll move on to resolution number 4, preserving local governance of Massachusetts schools. And where, therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to restore local governance and accountability for the Lawrence, Holyoke, and Southbridge public schools no later than July 1st, 2023, and be it further resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls on the Massachusetts legislature to enact legislation to limit any future state takeovers to a term of no more than 3 years. Do we have a motion to approve resolution number 4?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? We have,
No from me.
okay, all in favor is 4. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
We have a 4-1 vote. So it passes for approval for resolution number 4. Resolution number 5, personal financial literacy education. Therefore, be it resolved that Mass Association School Committees file legislation that would have the effect of ensuring that all students have exposure to personal financial literacy curricula and ultimately graduate from high school with the lifelong knowledge of how to be fiscally responsible to avoid being deterred by financial woes. This legislation should ensure that the students at various levels would benefit from curriculum in Massachusetts public schools, which would include content in personal financial literacy. Do we have a motion to approve resolution number 5?
I'll move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? We have a 5-0 vote in favor, 5 being present. We move on to resolution number 6, establishment of a regional school assessment reserve fund. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts legislature to enact or amend legislation which permits municipalities to establish a regional school assessment reserve fund. Is there a motion to approve resolution number 6?
So move.
Is there a second? I'll second. Okay, thank you. And all in, any discussion? All in favor? I see a 5-0 vote in favor of resolution number 6. That passes to be approved or to be recommended to the delegate. So that moves us on to, do we have a motion to enter into, oh, wait a minute, I'm so sorry. The next regular session meeting of the school committee is scheduled for Wednesday, October 19th, 2022. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
Sure, I can make the motion to move into executive session. I vote that we meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, the Para-Educators Union and Teachers Union, and under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to review, approve executive session minutes, September 21st, 2022, and that we will adjourn after our executive session.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote? Is it roll call?
Yeah, it is.
Bachelor, aye. Bachelor, yes.
Vincent, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Nandan, yes.
Durrett, yes.
And I did want to declare that the open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the board's bargaining and negotiation positions. This meeting will not reconvene in open session, as she said. We are now in the executive session. I invite everyone to now exit the room unless you have been invited to attend this executive session.